The security scanner's alarm pierced through the busy terminal like a blade cutting silk. Ambassador Camilla Chen stepped back from the checkpoint, her weathered hands steady despite the chaos erupting around her. The Zephyrian Royal Guard's crystalline armor caught the artificial light as they surrounded the human diplomat, their bioluminescent crests flashing urgent warnings. Commander Velthar's 6 eyes focused on the small Earth woman with predatory intensity. His species had evolved from apex hunters, and every instinct screamed that this seemingly harmless creature posed a threat beyond comprehension. The scanner's readings were impossible to ignore. The energy signatures coming from her simple leather bag defied every known law of physics. Ambassador Chen, Velthar's voice resonated through his translation device, the mechanical tone unable to mask his growing concern. You will submit to immediate inspection. The quantum scanners are detecting energy patterns that exceed our safety protocols by several magnitudes. Camilla's expression remained calm, almost serene. She had expected this moment for months, ever since the Galactic Council had voted to exclude humanity from the upcoming peace negotiations. The other species saw humans as primitive, violent, and unworthy of a seat at the table that would determine the fate of 3 star systems currently torn apart by civil war. "Of course, Commander," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of 67 years and a lifetime of diplomatic service. "Though I should mention that the contents are rather delicate." The Zephyrian's talons clicked nervously against his weapon as he gestured toward a private screening room. The other passengers, a mix of various alien species, watched with curiosity and growing unease. Humans were rare this far into the galaxy's core, and most beings had only heard stories about Earth's strange inhabitants. As they moved through the terminal, Camilla noticed the subtle signs of a civilization in decline. The once pristine walls of Nexus Station showed scorch marks from recent riots. Refugee camps had sprung up in the lower levels, filled with beings displaced by the ongoing conflicts that had consumed the Outer Rim for nearly a decade. The screening room was sterile and cold, its walls lined with sensors that could detect everything from explosive compounds to exotic matter. Commander Velthar's security team took positions around the room while specialized technicians prepared their equipment. The bag sat on the examination table like a mundane object, its worn leather surface giving no hint of the readings that had triggered every alarm in the facility. "I must warn you," Velthar said, his crests now glowing a deep crimson that indicated maximum threat assessment. "If this container holds weapons of mass destruction, the consequences will be severe. Humanity's application for galactic citizenship is already under review due to your species' violent history." Camilla nodded thoughtfully. She had heard this argument countless times. Yes, humans had a history of conflict. Yes, they had developed terrible weapons and waged devastating wars. But they had also done something that no other species in the known galaxy had accomplished. They had overcome their nature. "Tell me, Commander," she said, while the technicians continued their scans. "What do you know about Earth's history?" The Zephyrian's mandibles clicked in what his species considered polite dismissal. "Your people have been at war for over 10,000 years. You have developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Your literature is filled with stories of violence and conquest. This is why the Council questions humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship." "And yet," Camilla continued, "we stopped." The scanning equipment began to hum with increasing intensity. Whatever was in the bag was unlike anything in their databases. The energy readings suggested technology that operated on principles the galactic community didn't understand. "Stopped?" Velthar's voice carried genuine confusion. "Commander, when was the last time the Zephyrian Empire experienced internal conflict?" "We have had border disputes with the hegemony for 3 centuries, he admitted reluctantly. "And the Centauri Collective? The Void Walkers? The Silicon Courts?" Camilla's questions came calmly, but each one struck like a hammer blow. Every species in this galaxy is currently engaged in some form of warfare. Every civilization has ongoing conflicts that have lasted generations. The lead technician approached with her scanner readings, her expression troubled. "Commander, we're detecting temporal distortions, quantum fluctuations, and energy patterns that suggest impossible things. The container appears to hold multiple items, but our scans indicate they occupy the same space while remaining distinct objects." Velthar's attention snapped back to the bag. "Explain." "Sir, the closest comparison would be if someone had managed to compress an entire star system into a container no larger than a meal ration, while somehow maintaining the individual properties of each component." The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the station's life support systems. Camilla watched the faces around her, seeing the fear and confusion that always accompanied humanity's first real introduction to galactic society. "Perhaps," she suggested quietly, "it would be better if I simply showed you." "Absolutely not," Velthar responded immediately. "We have protocols for unknown alien technology. This bag will be transferred to a secure laboratory where it can be studied safely." "I'm afraid that won't work," Camilla said with the patience of someone who had spent decades navigating bureaucratic obstacles. "The contents are specifically attuned to human biosignatures. They won't function for your scientists, and forcing them open could damage what's inside." The technician consulted her readings again. "Commander, the energy output is increasing. Whatever these objects are, they appear to be responding to the ambassador's presence." Velthar's combat experience warred with his curiosity. On one hand, unknown alien technology represented a potential threat to the entire station. On the other hand, the human woman showed no signs of aggression or deception. His species prided themselves on reading emotional states, and Camilla Chen radiated nothing but calm determination. "What assurance can you give that opening this container will not endanger my station or my people?" Camilla considered the question seriously. "I cannot give you that assurance, Commander. What I can tell you is that the contents represent humanity's greatest achievements. They are not weapons, though they could be used destructively if mishandled. They are not tools of conquest, though they have the power to reshape civilizations. Then what are they? Gifts." The simple word hung in the air like a physical presence. Around the galaxy, gift-giving was a complex ritual fraught with political implications. Some species used gifts to establish dominance, others to create debt obligations. The concept of a gift freely given without expectation of return was virtually unknown in galactic politics. "Gifts for whom?" Velthar asked cautiously. "For anyone who needs them," Camilla replied, though specifically they were intended for the delegates at the peace conference. The commander's crests flashed through several colors as he processed this information. The conference that humanity was excluded from participating in? The very same. Another alarm began sounding, this one indicating that the energy readings had reached critical levels. The technicians stepped back from their equipment as displays began showing readings that exceeded their measurement capabilities. "Ambassador," the lead technician called out urgently, "whatever is in that container is becoming increasingly unstable. The quantum resonance is approaching cascade failure." Camilla sighed softly. She had hoped to present the gifts under more formal circumstances, perhaps in the council chambers with proper ceremony, but it seemed that the universe had other plans. "Commander Velthar," she said, reaching slowly toward the bag's simple leather clasp. "What I'm about to show you represents 150 years of human development since we first learned we were not alone in the universe. It represents our answer to the question that has plagued every species we've encountered. How do you end a war that has lasted longer than most civilizations?" The Zephyrian's hand moved instinctively to his weapon, but something in the human's demeanor stopped him from drawing it. There was no threat in her movements, no aggression in her stance. If anything, She seemed almost sad. You see, Camilla continued as her fingers worked the worn leather clasp, humanity discovered something that apparently no other species has managed to learn. We discovered that the most powerful force in the universe isn't superior firepower or advanced technology or even divine intervention. The clasp opened with a soft click that somehow seemed to echo through the entire station. The energy readings spiked beyond measurement, but instead of the expected explosion or catastrophic failure, something extraordinary happened. The most powerful force in the universe, Camilla said as she began to open the bag, is hope. Light began to spill from the opening, not the harsh glare of energy weapons or the cold illumination of technology, but something warm and alive. It seemed to carry with it the scent of spring rain and the sound of children laughing. Commander Velthar felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth: wonder. Pure, uncomplicated wonder at something beautiful and impossible. Around the room, his security team lowered their weapons without conscious thought, their aggressive postures relaxing as the light washed over them. "What?" he began, then found that words failed him entirely. "These," Camilla said softly, reaching into the bag, "are the tools that ended war on Earth forever." The first object Camilla withdrew from the bag defied every expectation Commander Velthar had formed. It was a sphere no larger than his fist, its surface appearing to be made of crystallized music. As it emerged into the sterile air of the security room, harmonic frequencies filled the space, not heard but felt, resonating through bone and spirit in ways that should have been impossible. "This," Camilla said, cradling the sphere with the tenderness one might show a newborn, "is a memory of peace. It contains the final moment of Earth's last war." The Zephyrian security team found themselves unconsciously stepping closer, their predatory instincts overwhelmed by something their species had no word for. The closest translation would have been healing, but even that fell short of the profound sense of rightness that emanated from the sphere. Velthar's 6 eyes focused on the object with growing confusion. His scanners showed impossible readings. The sphere appeared to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously while maintaining perfect stability. More disturbing still, his threat assessment systems couldn't classify it as either dangerous or safe. It simply existed outside the parameters his people used to categorize reality. "Explain," he demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier authority. The harmonic resonance was affecting his species' natural aggression, replacing it with something uncomfortably close to tranquility. Camilla smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features into something almost luminous. In 2387, the last human war ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. 2 armies faced each other across a battlefield on Europa, and instead of fighting, they began to remember. She held the sphere higher, and the harmonic frequencies intensified. Around the room, hardened security officers found their hands moving away from their weapons without conscious thought. The Zephyrian technicians discovered that their usual anxiety about unknown technology was replaced by profound curiosity. "Remember what?" Velthar asked, surprised to find himself genuinely interested rather than simply following protocol. "Everything," Camilla replied. "Every moment of joy that had been forgotten in the hatred. Every act of kindness that had been buried under layers of propaganda. Every shared dream that had been sacrificed to the machinery of war. The soldiers on both sides simply remembered what they were truly fighting for." The sphere pulsed gently, and suddenly Velthar was experiencing something that shouldn't have been possible. For just an instant, he felt the memory of his first sunrise on his homeworld, not as the trained killer he had become, but as the youngling who had believed the galaxy was full of wonders waiting to be discovered. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice shaking. Memories cannot be stored in crystalline matrix. Emotional resonance cannot be transmitted across species barriers. Impossible by the current understanding of galactic science, Camilla agreed. But you're experiencing it nonetheless. Humanity spent 150 years learning to do impossible things. She carefully placed the memory of peace back into the bag and withdrew the second object. This one appeared to be a simple wooden box, its surface worn smooth by countless hands. But as it emerged from the bag, the temperature in the room seemed to rise. Not with heat, but with warmth. The kind of warmth that came from being truly welcomed home after a long journey. "This is a box of belonging," Camilla explained, noting how the security team unconsciously formed a circle around her rather than maintaining their defensive positions. "It contains the understanding that every being in the universe shares the same fundamental needs: acceptance, purpose, and the knowledge that they matter." Velthar's throat sacs vibrated with emotion, his species associated with deep grief, though he couldn't understand why. "What does it do?" Instead of answering directly, Camilla opened the simple wooden lid. What emerged wasn't light or sound, but something far more profound. The absolute certainty that in this moment, in this place, everyone present was exactly where they belonged. The feeling was so overwhelming that the lead technician, a normally stoic being who had spent decades handling dangerous alien artifacts, found herself weeping. "The wars ravaging your outer rim," Camilla said gently. "They're not really about territory or resources or ancient grievances. They're about beings who have forgotten that they belong somewhere, fighting against others who have forgotten the same thing. The box of belonging reminds them." "Reminds them of what?" "That home isn't a place you conquer. It's a feeling you create together." Commander Velthar felt something breaking apart inside him, not painfully, but like ice melting in spring sunshine. He had spent his entire adult life as a soldier, defining himself in opposition to threats and enemies. The idea that those enemies might simply be beings who had lost their way was more revolutionary than any weapon. "These objects," he said slowly, "they change how people think." "They remind people how to feel," Camilla corrected. "Thinking creates problems. Feeling creates solutions." She closed the box of belonging and withdrew the third object. This one was unlike the others. A simple mirror that seemed to reflect not what was in front of it, but what could be. As it emerged from the bag, everyone in the room suddenly saw themselves as they might become, not the worn, cynical beings shaped by endless conflict, but the hopeful creatures they had been before the galaxy had taught them to expect only disappointment. "The mirror of potential," Camilla announced. "It shows not who you are, but who you could choose to be." Velthar saw himself in the mirror and recoiled. The reflection showed not a hardened commander, but a young Zephyrian who had joined the Royal Guard because he believed in protecting the innocent. The being in the mirror had never learned to categorize entire species as threats. He had never ordered the bombardment of refugee camps or authorized the use of psychological warfare against civilian populations. "This is manipulation," he accused, though his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Camilla asked. "Or is it simply truth? That reflection isn't showing you someone else. It's showing you a choice you can still make." The fourth object was a small, seemingly empty glass vial. As it emerged from the bag, the air itself seemed to become more breathable, more alive. The recycled atmosphere of the space station suddenly carried hints of ocean breeze and forest rain. "Bottled tomorrow," Camilla said simply. "It contains the future that becomes possible when beings choose hope over fear." "That's not scientifically possible," the lead technician protested, though her voice was full of wonder rather than skepticism. "Show me the science that explains consciousness," Camilla replied. Show me the equation that describes love. Show me the formula for courage. Some of the most powerful forces in the universe cannot be measured by instruments, but they can be experienced by anyone willing to open their heart. She uncorked the vial, and suddenly the security room felt less like a sterile government facility and more like a place where miracles might happen. The very air seemed pregnant with possibility, as if the next words spoken might reshape reality itself. You see, Camilla continued, withdrawing the fifth object, a small seed that glowed with inner light, humanity learned something that apparently no other species has discovered. We learned that the universe responds to intention. These conflicts tearing apart your galaxy exist because too many beings intend for them to continue. That's absurd, Velthar protested, though he found himself leaning forward to get a better look at the glowing seed. Wars continue because of resource scarcity, territorial disputes, incompatible ideologies. Wars continue, Camilla said firmly, because people believe they must. The moment enough beings intend for peace to exist, it becomes inevitable. This seed contains that intention, concentrated and purified through decades of human focus. The seed's glow intensified, and suddenly everyone in the room could see it. A future where the current conflicts had become historical footnotes, where different species worked together to build something beautiful instead of tearing each other apart. It wasn't naive optimism, but something far more powerful. The absolute certainty that such a future was not only possible, but achievable. "How many objects are in that bag?" Velthar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 47, Camilla replied. One for each member of the Galactic Council, plus a few extras for anyone else who might need them. And humanity developed these gifts after being excluded from the peace negotiations? Humanity developed these gifts precisely because we were excluded, Camilla corrected. Being denied a seat at the table forced us to find a different approach. We couldn't end the wars through diplomatic pressure or military intervention, so we had to become creative. She returned the seed to the bag and withdrew the sixth object, a small book whose pages seemed to write themselves as one watched. "The story of what happens next," she announced. "It shows how each person's individual choices contribute to the collective future." As Velthar watched, his name appeared on one of the pages, followed by text that described the choice he was about to face. The book showed two possible futures, one where he followed protocol and confiscated the bag, leading to humanity's permanent exclusion from galactic society and the continuation of the current conflicts for another 3 centuries. And another where he chose to escort the human ambassador to the peace conference, resulting in a transformation that would echo across the galaxy for millennia. "This is prophecy," he breathed. "This is responsibility," Camilla corrected. "The future isn't predetermined. It's created by the choices conscious beings make in each moment. The book simply shows you which direction your choices are leading." The weight of that knowledge settled on Commander Velthar like a physical presence. His entire worldview, built on the assumption that conflict was inevitable and peace was a naive dream, crumbled in the face of these impossible objects that made the impossible seem not just achievable, but natural. "Why?" he asked. "Why would humanity share these gifts after the way you've been treated?" Camilla's smile was gentle and infinitely sad. "Because, Commander, that's what it means to be human. We learned long ago that the only way to create the world we want to live in is to act as if it already exists." Commander Velthar stood in silence for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, watching as Camilla Chen returned each impossible object to her worn leather bag. The security room that had felt sterile and threatening when they entered now seemed warm and alive, as if the very walls had been transformed by witnessing something unprecedented. His communication device chirped with an incoming priority message from the station administrator. The Galactic Council delegates were arriving early for the peace conference, and additional security sweeps were required throughout the facility. Standard protocol demanded that he detain the human ambassador and transfer the bag to the weapons analysis department. Instead, Velthar found himself asking, "How long did it take?" "I'm sorry?" "On Earth. How long did it take to end all warfare forever?" Camilla's weathered hands smoothed the bag's leather surface thoughtfully. 7 generations from the first moment someone chose to believe it was possible to the last shot fired in anger. But the real transformation happened in a single day when enough people decided that peace was more interesting than war. The lead technician approached cautiously, her scanner readings still showing impossible energy signatures from the bag. "Ambassador, our instruments cannot classify these objects according to any known scientific principles. If we allow you to proceed to the conference, we would be violating every safety protocol in our database." "And if you don't allow her to proceed," Velthar said slowly, understanding dawning in his voice, "we'll be violating something far more important." His security team exchanged glances. They had served under the commander for years, following orders without question through campaigns that had left entire worlds scarred. But something fundamental had shifted in the last hour. The absolute certainty that violence was sometimes necessary had been replaced by the revolutionary idea that it might never be necessary at all. "Sir," his second-in-command ventured carefully, "what are your orders?" Velthar's crests cycled through colors his species associated with deep contemplation. Everything in his training told him to follow established procedures. Everything in his newly awakened heart told him that some moments transcended protocol. "Tell me about the last object," he said to Camilla instead of answering his subordinate. The human ambassador's eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. "I was hoping you would ask." She reached into the bag one final time and withdrew something that shouldn't have been able to fit in such a small container, a crystal formation the size of a person. Its faceted surface reflecting light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "The heart of collective consciousness," she announced, as the massive crystal somehow materialized fully in the small room without displacing anything else. "It allows every being in a given area to experience the thoughts and emotions of everyone else, without judgment or interpretation." The crystal began to pulse with a rhythm that matched the heartbeats of everyone present. Suddenly, Velthar could feel the exhaustion of his security team, the fear of the technicians, the hope and determination radiating from Camilla, and something else. A vast web of connection that extended far beyond the security room. He could sense the delegates arriving at the station, each carrying their own burden of grief and frustration. The hegemony representatives, exhausted by 3 centuries of border conflicts. The collective ambassadors, desperate to find a solution that would save their dying colonies. The Void Walker emissaries, driven by territorial instincts they couldn't control. And threading through all of it, he felt something that took his breath away. The shared desire for peace that every being carried in their heart, buried under layers of conditioning and political necessity, but still burning like an ember waiting for the right wind to fan it into flame. "This is what humanity discovered," Camilla said softly, her voice somehow reaching him through the symphony of connected consciousness. "Every species, every individual, every government leader who authorizes war crimes or terrorist acts, they all want the same thing. They want to feel safe, loved, and valued. They want their children to inherit a better world than the one they received." The crystal's pulse intensified, and suddenly Velthar wasn't just sensing the emotions of those around him, he was experiencing their memories. He lived through the hegemony delegate's childhood on a war-torn world where playing outside meant risking death from orbital bombardments. He felt the collective ambassador's grief as she remembered her son, killed in a raid that served no strategic purpose but was carried out because it had always been carried out. The tragedy, Camilla continued, is not that these beings are evil or corrupt. The tragedy is that they've forgotten how to trust that others share their deepest desires. They've learned to see differences in ideology or biology as threats instead of opportunities for growth. Through the crystal's influence, Velthar experienced something that changed him at the cellular level. He felt the fear that drove his own people's aggression, the terror of being vulnerable, of being seen as weak, of failing to protect what mattered most. And simultaneously, he felt the identical fear radiating from every other species' representatives. "We're all afraid of the same things," he whispered in amazement. "And we all want the same things," Camilla confirmed. "Safety for our loved ones, purpose for our lives, the knowledge that our existence matters. The only reason conflict continues is because each group believes they must take these things from others instead of creating them together." The communication device chirped again, more urgently this time. The council delegates were asking about the security delay. Several were threatening to leave if the conference couldn't guarantee their safety, and the entire peace process was on the verge of collapse before it even began. "Commander," the lead technician said quietly, "whatever you're going to do, you need to decide now." Velthar looked around the security room, seeing his team and the human ambassador through new eyes. These weren't potential threats to be managed or diplomatic problems to be solved. They were conscious beings struggling with the same fundamental questions that had driven his own species to evolve beyond their predatory origins. "How do I know this isn't some form of sophisticated psychological manipulation?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "You don't," Camilla admitted freely. "Just like I don't know for certain that showing these gifts to the council delegates will end the current conflicts. What I do know is that humanity tried every other approach first: diplomacy, economic pressure, military intervention, technological solutions, and none of them worked. The only thing that finally brought peace to Earth was the recognition that everyone involved in every conflict was fighting for love. Fighting for love? Fighting to protect what they loved from those they feared would take it away. Once we realized that both sides of every war were trying to preserve the same things, ending the conflicts became a matter of showing them how to preserve those things together. The crystal's pulse began to slow, but its influence remained. Velthar could still feel the web of connection extending throughout the station, touching every delegate, every security officer, every maintenance worker, and he could sense something else, a growing anticipation, as if the universe itself was holding its breath to see what choice he would make. "Sir?" his second-in-command prompted gently. Commander Velthar straightened to his full height, his decision crystallizing with the clarity that came from seeing a situation without the distortion of preconceptions. "We will escort Ambassador Chen to the council chambers immediately. Full honor guard protocol." "Sir, the weapons are not weapons," Velthar interrupted firmly. "They are gifts, and it's been far too long since anyone in this galaxy received a gift without strings attached." As they prepared to leave the security room, the crystal formation somehow returned to the bag, despite being larger than the container should have been able to hold. Camilla sealed the leather clasp with the same careful attention she had shown when opening it. "Commander," she said as they walked toward the door, "there's one more thing you should know about humanity's approach to ending conflict." "Yes?" "It only works if the beings involved choose it freely. These gifts will have no effect on anyone who doesn't want to change. They won't force peace on those who prefer war. They simply make it easier for those who are ready to choose differently." The corridor outside the security room buzzed with activity as news of the unusual delay spread throughout the station. Representatives from various species whispered among themselves, speculating about what could have caused such a disruption in protocol. As the honor guard formed around Ambassador Chen, Velthar noticed something remarkable happening. The beings they passed, hardened diplomats and security personnel who had seen decades of failed negotiations, seemed to straighten slightly as the human woman walked by. Their expressions softened almost imperceptibly, as if some tension they had carried for years was finally beginning to ease. "Is this another effect of the gifts?" he asked quietly. "No," Camilla replied with a gentle smile. "This is what happens when beings remember that hope is contagious." The council chambers loomed ahead, filled with delegates who had arrived expecting another round of futile posturing and political maneuvering. They had no idea that within minutes, their understanding of what was possible in the universe was about to be fundamentally transformed. Commander Velthar took a deep breath and opened the chamber's doors. Knowing that what happened in the next few hours would determine whether the galaxy's conflicts would continue for another 3 centuries, or whether they were about to witness the beginning of something unprecedented. A peace that came not from conquest or compromise, but from the simple recognition that every conscious being in the universe was fighting the same battle against fear, loneliness, and the terrible uncertainty of existence. As Ambassador Chen stepped into the chamber carrying her impossible bag of gifts, Velthar realized that humanity's greatest achievement wasn't the development of reality-altering technology or the mastery of consciousness itself. Their greatest achievement was maintaining the courage to believe that the universe could be better than it was, and acting on that belief even when everyone else had given up hope. The chamber doors closed behind them, and the real work of peace began.